Choosing Life by ginnyrules27, Chapter 32. Elle smiled as she looked at her daughter, cooing happily in her bassinet. Today was the day she received her blessing from their aquatic family, or a christening, as the others in Oridon might call it. Ella never found it necessary to correct them. Even if following suit, it would be called a christening, since it was basically the same thing, just a different name. The kid was still getting a gift after all. Gently lifting her out of the bassinet, Elle smiled down at Emily. How had it only been a month or so since this little bundle of perfection had been born? It felt like it was only yesterday that Elle was going into the hospital to prepare for her water birth. You are my world, my darling. What a wonderful world I see. Elle began to sing, her words soft yet still audible. She didn't exactly know why she was singing, but the song her mother had sung to Melody rang through her head. Oh, don't get her wrong. It would also have been the song her mother would have sung to her the day of her blessing, had Elle's numerous surgeries not prevented the big party. Elle didn't mind. She knew her mother loved both of her and Melody equally. You are the song I'm singing. You're my beautiful Emily. She continued to sing, Emily cooing happily in her arms. Down to the sea we go, down to a world I know. There continues to be, and hopefully more, children are born of sea and shore. Down to the sea we go, down to the world we know. A journey to bless my Emily, under the sun and under the sea. A subtle knock on the door brought Elle out of her musings. Come in, she called. Singing to Emily again? Akio asked with a smile as he entered the room. And here I thought you'd barge in like Dad did with Mel's blessing. Elle chuckled. Akio shook his head. Believe it or not, Ben sat me down after Stephanie and Maurice were born and explained that, while he loves how insane I am, I need to tone it down when I'm around the kids. Or he'll have Nick sit on me. You know you'd love that, Elle said with a small snort. Yeah, Akio chuckled, but also, I didn't want to startle you or whoever was in here and cause them to drop Emily. Elle couldn't help but give her husband a loving smile as she heard that. Of course, she wouldn't want anyone to drop Emily either, but it was always so touching how much Akio seemed to care. Maybe it was just a hang-up left over from her youth, about how she had worried that no one would care about her because of her chair. She wasn't going to lie. It was nice to be proven wrong about that. Everyone here? Elle asked, pulling herself out of her thoughts. All humans and canines, Akio said with a chuckle. The only ones not here are Macaria and Gil. Marcos heard about his grandfather's egg obsession and tried to eat 4 dozen in one sitting, which for a toddler is too much for even a godling toddler. Amir and Emma, apparently Emma's getting really bad carpet sickness when they try to fly, so Amir doesn't want to risk it on the seas. Elle couldn't help the sympathetic smile that pulled at her lips. Poor Emma. I know this is going to sound bad, but I couldn't imagine going through the full 9 months of a mortal's pregnancy. Thank the gods for Mum's mermaid heritage. I think Emma would know you didn't mean anything negative there, sweetheart, Akio said with a small smile. And honestly, I think she'd agree with you. The more I hear about pregnancy, the more glad I am I don't have to go through it. I think you'd love being pregnant, honestly. No one tells you what you can or can't eat. Well, except for sushi, but I don't eat that anyway. Or caffeine, or alcohol. And people touch you. To quote Emperor Cusco and Hattie regarding his hair, no touchy, Akio said firmly, and Elle couldn't help the small giggle that escaped her lips. Thankfully, Emily cooed at the same time, earning a smile from Akio. Oh, really? You agree with Papa? No touchy? He asked as he gently took Emily from Elle's arms and brushed some lint from the bottom of her white dress. A dress that looked almost identical to her Aunt Melody's, except the scallop lining was silver rather than peach. You ready to go out, my beautiful snow angel? There's some people who are excited to see you. And a reindeer who would really like to be on solid ground, a voice piped up from near the ground. Hi, Hi, I'm Olaf and I like warm hugs. Olaf, I've known who you are my whole life, Akio said, shaking his head, as Emily squealed in delight at seeing the sentient snowman. You don't have to introduce yourself all the time. But Elsa and Anna said it's nice to introduce yourself every time you meet someone new, Olaf said, and smiled at Emily, who cooed back at him. And I've never met her before. Well, you have now, Elle said with a small smile, as Akio handed Emily back to her. Olaf, meet Emily. She's Akio's and I's daughter. Oh, a daughter! How amazing! You must have all this wisdom now that you're a parent. And now make the slow decline towards the end. Akio blinked before quickly deciding not to address that topic. Okay, let's not talk about that. How about you go see if Elle's family's here? Oh, you mean Mal and Ben and Uma and Harry? They're here already. They're the ones who sent me to find you. You know what, we're just going to skip that part, Elle said, shaking her head. Akio, can you push me out? I can't, with Emily in my arms. I got it, Akio said with a smile, as he went to push Elle's chair. They made their way to the deck of the ship, where Ariel, Eric, Anna, Kristoff, Melody and Elsa were waiting. Elsa entertaining Maddie and Percy with small flurries of snow, as Herky and Hattie hung out with Melody and Hillis, opting to converse with the adultier adults. Meanwhile, Mal and Ben were off to the side, comforting Uma, who was bent over the railing. I love this copy, but the irony of them giving me seasickness will be something I will remind them of for years to come. Akio heard Uma mutter as he walked over to see if he could help. Elle being safely fawned over by their families. Not that Elle was in any danger from Uma, of course, but the grandparents would want to see the new grandchild once more. Anything I can do to help? Akio asked as he made his presence known. Not unless you can speed up time, Mal said as she looked over at him. That'll be the only way to get Uma to December. Sadly, I do not possess that ability. Akio shook his head. Time travel was not one of the family gifts, unfortunately. I can see about getting Uma some ginger ale while we wait on the underseas contingent. You carry ginger ale on the ship? Mal said, raising an eyebrow. When we were informed that a pregnant woman would be on board, I made sure everything was stocked, Akio said. Ben shook his head. Mal, did you really expect Akio not to be prepared? I guess I don't know what I was thinking, Mal snorted. That's okay. Happens to the best of us, Akio said with a grin. Where are Stephanie and Maurice? With my dad, Mal said with a small smile. We're trying to avoid smothering them too much, even though I know they'd love to be here. But I know Dad'll do a good job watching them, and he's even decided to overlook the lack of an invite since you guys are gifting him a day with him, Mum, Rhea and the kids. The lack of an invite was purely an oversight, but I'm glad Lord Hades took no offence. Akio nodded, but he kept an eye on Ben. His best friend seemed tense about the whole thing. Not because he didn't trust his brother-in-law. No, Akio knew Ben way too well to know it was nothing related to Hattie. To anyone who didn't know Ben, it would be chalked up to first-time parent worries. But Akio knew otherwise. Knew that it stemmed from what happened when Stephanie was brought home from the hospital. Knew Ben was worried that something like it would happen again, and this time he'd be powerless to do anything about it. The blonde gently rested a hand on Ben's shoulder, in a silent message he hoped Ben understood. He knew where his friend was coming from. How could he not? Akio had wanted to march down there and punch that reporter's lights out when he saw Stephanie being accosted. And now that he was a parent, the understanding only grew. We should go, Ben said softly. I don't want to delay anything. We're still waiting on Elle's Mer family, dude, Akio said, his hand still on Ben's shoulder. Grimsby will announce. Ahoy there, they're coming! One of the sailors announced. Did Grimsby de-age when we weren't told? Harry said as another sailor came up with a canteen of ginger ale for Uma. Akio chuckled. No, I guess one of the newer sailors got a bit excited. But come on, no reason we should all be standing over here. Estelle and Nix yipped and wagged their tails. They wanted to meet the new humans too. You know, while I know you said you were bringing them, I still thought you'd leave them as babysitters, Akio said as they made their way to Elle's family. Mal could only shrug. not wanting to reveal the real reason she wanted Estelle and Nyx with her when she was on a boat surrounded by water. After all, it had been Estelle and Harry who had saved her life all those years ago, and while she finally had started taking some swimming lessons with Ariel, there was a difference between willingly going into a swimming pool where she could see the bottom and the ocean. "Mal!" Elle grinned as she saw the purple-haired woman, pulling Mal out of her thoughts. "I'm so glad you were able to make it." "There's no place I'd rather be," Mal said as she smiled at Elle. "How are you doing? Healing all right?" Elle chuckled. "I'm doing just fine, though I'm sure it has something to do with the fact that my husband refuses to let me lift a finger for an entire month." "Ah, so you're married to Ben as well?" Ben shook his head and looked at Akio.
"You ever get the sense our wives are making fun of us?"
"All the time, dude. All the time," Akio chuckled. Elle chuckled, but paused as she looked around. "Is Jamie not coming? I thought—" "You really thought I'd miss this?" a feminine voice called over the sound of what seemed to be rockets.
"I want one,"
Harry said as he saw the rocket-powered surfboard that seemed to be powered by solar energy.
"I want 20. I'm more concerned over the number than I am surprised that you want one," Uma told him as Maddie and Percy began cheering at the side of the solar-powered board.
"Hey, Jamie!" Elle called as Jamie landed her board and smiled, taking off her helmet as her brown hair cascaded off her face. "I'm glad you made it." "You didn't think I'd miss this, would you?" Jamie asked as she handed her helmet to a nearby attendant. "Plus, I get to see my mum. 2 birds, 1 stone." Ariel chuckled as she went over to give Jamie a hug. "How is your father doing?" "He's doing well, Auntie Ariel," Jamie said. "He's dating now." "Oh, really?" "Yeah, Dad finally figured I was old enough that I wouldn't be upset that he started dating Miss Kate. His friend from the Naval Academy," Jamie said as she returned her hug, before her eyes lit up at seeing the merpeople in the water. "Go say hello to your mother," Ariel told her. "Andrina's missed you. You haven't been spending a lot of time in the sea." "I know," Jamie said. "I've been studying, though. My placement exams are soon." "Just like your father," one of the mermaids called, a note of fondness audible in her voice. "I have no doubt he'll rise to the rank of commander just like he did." Elle watched as Jamie walked over to the side, but her attention was quickly drawn to another merperson, though her grandfather did make it rather difficult not to notice him, what with his plume of water bringing him eye level with her. "Hello, grandfather," Elle said with a smile.
"Hello, my precious Elle,"
Triton said, returning the smile. Elle knew that, no matter how old they got, she and her sister would always be their grandfather's precious. All the grandchildren were, and the great-grandchildren.
"I hope you don't mind, but I was wondering if you would let Atina do the blessing."
"Of course not," Elle said, though she couldn't help but be a bit worried. Why the change? "Don't be worried, Elle," her Aunt Atina thought to her. "Your grandfather just thought it was time I take on more queenly duties, as he wants to step down to be a grandfather to his grandkids, instead of a king. Plus, he thought that family would be the best option for me to do my first official blessing." "Oh, that makes sense," Elle thought back. "Hey, Aunt Atina, did Jamie ever have—" "Of course," Atina thought with a small nod. "I know that sometimes it seems we overlook her, because she spends more of her time in the air than in the seas. But she had her blessing. Adriana wouldn't let her father forget her." "Good. I wouldn't want her to be left out," Elle thought with a small smile as she glanced over at her brunette cousin, who was chatting happily with her mother. "Well now, I think it's time we perform this blessing," Atina said as Triton handed her the trident. Not before giving Ariel, Eric, Phil, Maddie, Percy, Akio and Melody a hug, of course. "Akio, if you mind holding Emily?" "Of course not," Akio said as he took his daughter into his arms. Once she was secured, Atina pointed the trident at her great niece. A gentle beam of light came from the trident, and Elle and Akio gasped as, for maybe 5 seconds, Emma had not human legs she was born with, but an icy blue mermaid tail. "When she's older, She'll have the ability to come and visit her family down at Atlantica, Ariel said, explaining to Anna and Kristoff, who looked slightly confused. Her tail colour matches my dress, Elsa said with a small chuckle. The dress I made for myself when I let it go with my powers. Ah, so it does, Akio nodded. Please let that be a coincidence. I wouldn't mind a daughter with ice powers, but I don't know how ice powers and a wheelchair-bound wife will mix. Do they make snow dyes for wheelchairs? We also have another present, Athena said, unknowingly bringing Akio out of his thoughts just before they began to spiral. Just as a locket is tradition for the second-born in the blessings of our family, the first-born traditionally gets one of these. She pulled out a tiara that looked almost as if it had been made of coral, the peach colour going nicely with the wisps of strawberry blonde hair Emily had growing on her head. It's so pretty, Maddie said. Perfect for Emmy. I'm glad you like it, Athena said, smiling at her great niece. But I think the more important question is, does Emily like it? Emily chose that moment to coo and clap her hands together. Seems like she does. Athena smiled as she handed the trident back to her father for his favourite part. Soon a rainbow was cast over the ship, earning another coo from the guest of honour and cheers from the younger kids. It was Elle's turn to smile as she watched her daughter, the smile on her face proving infectious. It was all Elle wanted, her little girl to have a happy and healthy life. And she had no doubt that both were possible, just as she had no doubt that all of the family would make sure it happened. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. I love that one. I'm glad I got the opportunity to sing Ariel's lullaby for Melody. Oh, beautiful. I hope my voice did it justice. And if you're thinking about the music in the background, yeah, I need to remonetize, and adding uncopyrighted music in the background, I was told that would add enough difference between the original writing of this and me. Basically, Ginny, because I am simply reading your work aloud, it is not uniquely mine enough to allow me to monetize it. Why let me monetize it for a year, I do not know. But it was demonetized about 5 months ago, and I'm trying to get it back. What I'm doing is I'm saving up for a computer at Christmas, and then I'm going to see if I can edit my existing videos with that. Just enough to add music in the background, so if you hear differences in my videos, that's the reason. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.